UFC Fight Night Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov has just taken place, with Kaue Fernandes exposing Mohammad Yahya on home turf, Figueiredo chipping Marlon Vera's granite chin for the first time, and Umar Nurmagomedov further proving that the Nurmagomedov family are the top of the game. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you a recap of every single fight on the card and ranking all the card's best moments. So let's kick it off with the first fight of Sedriques Dumas versus Dennis Tiuliulin. So Dumas pretty much played a perfect game plan here. I mean, he utilized the wrestling early and he attacked the legs to cut down Tiuliulin's gas tank as well as his movement too. And he utilized his range very well with that jab. I do think that he could have actually got a rear naked choke pretty early in the first round if Dumas got that hook in. He was struggling to get the hook in. I think he was more just maintaining, controlling position over the submission, because if he obviously got out of that, if Tiuliulin found a spot to get out of that, then there's obviously that KO power threat there, which is pretty much all the Dennis Tiuliulin really has going for him. And I'll say that Dennis Tiuliulin was working pretty well when it came to that submission defense and just not letting Dumas get those advantageous positions, and he was working the get-ups very well as well. I mean, he's training with Figueiredo. He was in his corner in this fight. That would have helped him out there, obviously, because we know the submission defense and the wrestling grappling defense of Figueiredo is very good, but he just didn't have anything to offer Sedriques Dumas offensively. So aside from the gas tank for Sedriques Dumas towards the end of the fight, he pretty much played a perfect fight and got the win. Moving on to Herbert versus Rolando Bedoya. So Herbert pretty much had a borderline flawless performance in this fight. Honestly, he got me a perfect prediction as well, because I said in the predictions video he would use the speed, he would use the movement and that technical striking, that kickboxing to his advantage, and he would just take over in the fight. He outlanded him. He was just quicker to the punch every single time they were in an exchange, and it just really showed how much slower Bedoya is in comparison, and that change from welterweight to lightweight. I mean, I'm sure it will do something, but not against someone like Herbert in this matchup with his speed. It's just, yeah, it wasn't there for Rolando Bedoya. And Herbert's right hand, he's an orthodox fighter. That right hand was just on lock every time Bedoya tried to get into range to get his strikes off. And then also just used his left hand as well very, very well with that jab, sticking that jab, especially later through the fight, to like when Rolando Bedoya was getting a bit urgent. Herbert was just cutting him down with the jab. So there just really wasn't anything for Rolando Bedoya in this fight. Even in the clinch exchanges as well, I thought Bedoya might be able to get the better of him there when it came to just his weight. He might just be a bit naturally heavier because he was coming down from welterweight, so he'd rehydrate better. But then Herbert just had the judo throws down pat. He looked fantastic in every avenue of the game pretty much. The only thing that you could really take away for Bedoya is the damage that he put on Herbert's eye, but I would probably just put that down to scar tissue, to be honest, in the amount of fights that Herbert has had. And yeah, Bedoya, I mean, he had the octagon control and was pressuring pretty well, but he couldn't really do anything with it. So yeah, Herbert with the technical combinations and the speed, he was just completely piecing Rolando Bedoya apart, and it should have been a 30-27 all round for him. I know there was one judge that gave a 29-28. Don't know what round Bedoya would have won in that fight, but yeah, overall definitely one of the greatest performances of the night for Herbert. And moving on to our first loss of the card, Viktoriia Dudakova versus Sam Hughes. Got to give it to Sam Hughes, honestly. She had very good activity on the feet. She was outlanding Dudakova, especially through the later half of the fight. Her takedown defense was holding up very well. She stuffed 7 out of 10 of Viktoriia Dudakova's takedowns, which Dudakova is usually very good at. She's usually good at mixing up her striking and then level changing and getting like a double leg. Usually she goes for a double leg. But yeah, Dudakova had a bit of success early, but aside from that, she just, it was the gas tank. The gas tank was absolutely terrible moving into the second half of the fight. Literally halfway through that second round, her gas tank was just going down the drain. I mean, before that, she was doing very well with the boxing, very good accuracy, and the clinch knees as well. That's where she was pulling away with the fight. But as soon as it got to that second half, she was gassing out very badly, and she needed that second to third round 1 minute break. Otherwise, yeah, it would have been, she honestly could have got TKO'd. She looked like she was going to get TKO'd towards the end of that second round anyway, if she didn't Granby roll and latch onto Sam Hughes's leg in the grappling exchange. Because if she didn't do that, I honestly think Sam Hughes actually could have gotten her out of there, because she was taking huge deep breaths, and the commentators pointed it out immediately as well. You could tell that she was just slowing down so much, whereas Sam Hughes was just consistently picking up the pace, and Dudakova just wasn't active enough in that third round. It was 1-1 pretty clear. And then going into that third round, it was a clear 29-28 for Sam Hughes, and it was well deserved. But there was very stupid judging. One of the judges gave Viktoriia Dudakova a 30-27. Like, I predicted her. I was expecting her to win, but no chance in hell. She won 2 rounds. No way. She only won 1 round. So, stupid judging aside, definitely a fair 29-28 win for Sam Hughes. And moving up the card, Guram Kutateladze versus Jordan Vuchenic. This was an awesome fight. I love this fight. Very back and forth. I mean, Vuchenic 100% took the first round. He performed fantastically well through the early doors. Literally straight from the first bell, he looked extremely confident on his walkout, getting into the cage, and obviously took that first round. Got the knockdown on Guram in that first round, looked very good. And then the second round, Guram Kutateladze, he did not allow Jordan Vuchenic to dictate that pace anymore. He was doing fantastically well with the hand speed, and he's just an athletic dog, honestly. Vuchenic was doing a very good job in the first round of leading with his jab, his lead hand, and he was able to cover a lot of distance, which was definitely frustrating Guram Kutateladze. But Kutateladze, straight into that second round, he was utilizing that strike speed, winning the boxing exchanges. And I'm going to say without a doubt, the detriment in this fight for Vuchenic and him losing was his corner. It wasn't him, it was his corner. The corner said that, they confidently said that he was 2-0 up going into that third round, which I think resulted in Vuchenic being a bit more just, lazy in his approach, just more lackluster, and he took full guard. He took full guard without much struggle at all. He just sat there in that third round and didn't really show any urgency to actually get up when Guram was on top. And then when he did try to get up, Guram blocked him in a body triangle, and that was pretty much it from there. That's how Guram definitely took the second and third rounds. And I don't think that's really Vuchenic's fault all in all. I think that is honestly more towards his corner, because the corner said, when he was on the ground in the third round, they said, okay, you're behind in this fight. But how does that make sense? The corner says you're 2-0 up, and then even if he's behind in the third round, you're still winning. But if they said he's 2-0 up, and then they say when he's got his back taken or he's on the ground, they say he's losing the fight. It's just like, which direction are you going in? You can't say both. They don't make sense. So very bad mixed messaging from Vuchenic's corner. And yeah, I think it's just fantastic comeback win for Guram Kutateladze, and he really shows that why he belongs in the UFC, especially with the fights that he's had and the wins that he's had and the results that he's had. I think it's fantastic for him to get a win, especially a comeback win from that second round. So without a doubt, secured that 29-28 win, and just a great win overall for him. Moving on, Shamiel Gaziev versus Don'Tale Mayes. This was definitely the worst fight on the card by a very far margin, and it was definitely boring. And I will say, as absolute dog shit as this fight was, the fat lard Gaziev, he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, realistically, you can't be that mad at it. I mean, he got the control, he made it ugly when it came to Mayes, pressing him against the cage, did not allow Mayes to have that distance to allow Mayes to have the striking opportunities there, which Mayes was definitely the better of, especially with that lead uppercut. I will say the lead uppercut is his best weapon. I mean, if you look through any of his fights, that lead uppercut, and then following through with a straight punch is fantastic. But yeah, Shamiel Gaziev obviously cut that away from him and just laid on him for pretty much the whole entire fight. And he had absolutely no answers for it. Mays had no answers for Shamiel Gaziev being on top. I mean, I don't know how the hell you get a guy that big off you, to be honest. And yeah, like, Gaziev won, but he's not getting any more fans by winning in this type of way. He needs to be looking for knockouts or at least submissions when you're on the ground like that. At least look for an arm triangle or something. No submission attempts, just very boring. And honestly, yeah, I think he needs to be proving himself a lot more in his next performances. He did not look like he actually, you know, grew a lot from that Rosenstruik fight, in all honesty. And if he's going to fight anyone like Rosenstruik again and he's having performances like this, he's not going to win. So yeah, not a great performance by Gaziev, but he did get it done at the end of the day. Moving up, Mohammad Yahya versus Kaue Fernandes. Now this, right after the Gaziev fight, breath of fresh air. This was fantastic. All Kaue Fernandes, literally a flawless performance from him. Not a chance in hell Mohammad Yahya was going to be doing anything in there. There was nothing that was going to be different. They looked like they were completely different levels of fighters. And this is why I had Kaue Fernandes as my fighter to watch in my predictions video. If you can't get him to the ground, his striking is just an absolute nightmare to deal with. And as I said in the predictions, Yahya just doesn't have that wrestling pedigree to get Kaue Fernandes there. So he is a sitting duck on the feet, unless, you know, if he was able to work a really good clinch game. But Kaue Fernandes is very good in the clinch as well. So I just didn't see any answers for him. And that leg, Yahya's lead leg, oh my god, it was ruined. It was a balloon. It was terrible. And there was 10 leg kicks thrown. If that went any longer, Jonathan Martinez style leg kick TKO finish without a doubt. Like, it was going to be finished in that first round one way or another. And I am very surprised ultimately that Yahya actually left the fight conscious. It was without a doubt the way he got finished was the best case scenario for him, especially with him having his weird posture. He had a very straight up posture, which he didn't even have in the Trevor Peek fight. It was very strange. It just didn't look like he wanted to be in there. And yeah, with that posture, the way he was fighting, honestly, the knockout was just put on a silver platter for Kaue. And yeah, an amazing UFC win to have for him as his first actual win. Just a fantastic performance for him, and definitely look out for him moving forward. And moving on to our feature prelim, Azamat Murzakanov versus Alonzo Menifield. Azamat is just way too fast, too accurate, and as I said in the predictions, Menifield was just too tentative, and he just let Azamat dictate the pace. And when you do that against Azamat, you're going to be getting chinned. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's just extremely good with his striking, very good with his boxing, and when he dictates the pace, it's just not looking good. And he is without a doubt one of the most underrated fighters in the light heavyweight division for sure, and one of the, if he goes any younger, definitely in the whole entire of the UFC. And he's going to be moving up the division very fast if he can stay active. That's the big question. And I'll say Menifield, I'm not going to put it all on Azamat. I mean, Menifield, he landed a few nice shots in the second round, but the striking combinations, even with the reach disadvantage, are just so deadly. And having a combination like that to finish it off, you know, getting the uppercut, left hook to right hook, then going straight to the ground and just brutally finishing him, sending his mouthpiece flying out of his mouth. You just can't really get much better than that, especially for a feature prelim. So yeah, ultimately just a great return for Azamat Murzakanov, and as he requested, it's time to be putting him on main card slots. And moving on to the main card, Joel Alvarez versus Elves Brener. Man, I did get this one wrong, obviously, and I thought Brener would be able to find that finish in the exchange, but Alvarez not only did a great job of outclassing Elves Brener pretty much absolutely everywhere, but the biggest thing is that Joel Alvarez didn't aggressively forward pressure, which I've seen him do many times before, which is where I thought that key would be for Brener to find that finish in an exchange. So he did a very good job of an appropriate style to use against a power puncher like Elvis Brener. And with that range, that reach, and that accuracy, Brener was a sitting duck. It was just a matter of time, honestly. And he's durable as hell. Brener is so durable, but yeah, not against someone that's that accurate, has that much reach, and honestly stiff power as well. He's actually got a fair bit of power there, and Brener wasn't going to. Every time I saw Brener shoot for a takedown, I was like, you just don't want to be on the ground with Joel Alvarez. You can just even feel it. Even though Elvis Brener trains with Charles Oliveira, has that submission game, Alvarez is the better submission artist. It's just a different level. He is extremely vicious with those submissions, and yeah, Brener just didn't show enough urgency to get in range against Alvarez, and that was the issue, because he was scared of Alvarez's power. You could tell. But the only way he was winning this fight, if he was going to, pressure low, like really make Alvarez guess for takedowns and then come up top and try and clip that chin. I think that was the only way it was going to happen. That's why it was my most controversial pick. But seeing what he did to Krzyzewski, that was definitely a chance there. That's definitely why I went for it. And Brener has been on like a murderer's row of fighters in the UFC. Like, all of his fights, he's had very, very tough fights. And I'm very surprised that he even got Joel Alvarez, to be honest. It kind of didn't make sense in terms of rankings. But yeah, hopefully he gets some form of easier opponent next, something that can boost him back up, because he's a good draw. I mean, he's got finishing potential, both submissions, and he's got the KO power there too. But it's either he fights a lesser opponent, or he moves down to featherweight if he can make it. I'm not too sure if he can or not, but I mean, his power translation there would be pretty vicious, which would be good, and hopefully the speed there would carry as well. And you're not going to have guys who are like 6'3" unless you're going against like Sean Woodson, where Sean Woodson doesn't have that same power. So yeah, I think it would be good for Elvis Brener to possibly look there if he can. But Joel Alvarez, he just looks fantastic. Very, very good at lightweight. I mean, he's got the range, the power, he's got the vicious ground game as well. And I think he's going to hit the top 15 very soon. And I think he's great for the sport as well, because he adds uniqueness with obviously his height in the division. He only one that's similar to him is like Jalen Turner, and he's from Spain. So Spain has pretty much no one aside from like Ilia Topuria, and being such a lethal ground game artist with that height as well is just definitely unique in itself. So I'm very keen to see more of him. And if Bobby Green if Bobby Green takes that fight, Joel Alvarez called him out, if he takes that fight, he has got his work cut out for him, and it's probably going to be another loss for Bobby Green if Alvarez is performing like that. And moving on, Mackenzie Dern versus Lupi Godinez. So I had Lupi Godinez going into this fight, and it was definitely a very close fight, but you just can't argue against Mackenzie Dern's activity. I mean, her combinations were looking like a lot better compared to any of her other fights that she's had, but her strike defense is still so piss poor. The lead left hook of Lupi was the best weapon that was used in this fight without a doubt, and she lost. It was catching Mackenzie Dern every time, and Mackenzie Dern's head just slings back every time she gets hit. So it just looks bad in terms of the judges, but it was that activity. It was definitely that activity. But honestly, Lupi is so defensively sound, striking, wrestling, ground game. And that's why I wish she was not so tentative in her approach. She was worried about the takedowns from Dern, and Dern's obviously very good on the ground, but I feel like she just needs to trust in herself a bit more on the ground. I mean, she escaped every single one of Mackenzie Dern's grappling exchanges that she had, where Dern almost had her in an armbar, almost Godinez stacked appropriately and got out of it. There wasn't really any issue there, but yeah, I wish she just let her hands go a bit more in this fight. But credit to Dern for getting the win, using the activity, and improving on those combinations especially. And moving on, Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. I mean, it's really sad. It's just time for Tony Ferguson to retire. I mean, I just don't see a way that he gets a win. There are fighters that he can fight in the UFC where I think he can get a win, don't get me wrong. But is it a win that's going to be rewarding for him? That's where the issue lies. And there's only one fighter I can think of that you can give him. Honestly, leave a comment down below if you think there's any others. Nick Diaz. I think Nick Diaz is the only one you can give him. And Tony Ferguson, win or lose against Nick Diaz, that is just a good way to go out regardless, especially if he can put on some kind of performance. And honestly, I don't think Tony Ferguson would do that bad. I mean, Nick Diaz looked like dog shit against Robbie Lawler, and that was a while ago. So if he can, if I was Tony Ferguson and if he's half in, half out, I'd be putting all my eggs into the Nick Diaz basket. And if he doesn't get Nick Diaz, retire. I think that's pretty plain and simple there, because I highly, highly doubt Dana's going to be giving him any more fights aside from that, because that's going to be a money draw anyway, and anything else, any prospects, anything like that, no point. Tony doesn't need to take it. It's no point in tarnishing him anymore, and there's just nothing to gain from it. You know, the up-and-comer is just going to get hate instantly if he beats Tony Ferguson, so yeah, no point. And enough about Tony Ferguson. As much as I want to talk about him more, Chiesa looked great, and most of all, he's just not at the point where Tony Ferguson is at in his career. Michael Chiesa is more fresh in his career. Yes, he's still old, but not at Tony Ferguson's age and, you know, the beatings that he has taken. And I really don't know what's next for Chiesa, to be honest. I really don't know, because I thought he actually should have retired after this, because I think he should just focus on his career as an analyst at this point. There's not really much else for him to gain, but obviously I don't know him. I don't know what he speaks about with his family and all that, and there might be some fights that he still wants there. And he looked great. I mean, the submission locked it up straight away. His transition to the back, you know, he was just outworking Tony Ferguson completely on the feet. Speed level was just completely different. But hopefully, if he does fight again, hopefully he retires with a win in that fight. Moving up, Marlon Vera versus Deiveson Figueiredo. Perfect prediction again. Thank you, Figgy. Absolutely no doubt with this guy that he has the ability to challenge for that title in bantamweight. Like, honestly, this guy, he can cause problems for absolutely anyone at 125, 135, and wouldn't be surprised with some 145s, to be honest. And that includes, like, O'Malley. You know, he's 36 years old, but I still think I mean, it's blatantly obvious that he is a problem still. You know, he looks very fresh. He barely got tired in this fight, and that's just with all the 5-round experience. You know, he was a champion for a reason. That's what I said in the predictions. He's a champion for a reason. Marlon Vera is not a champion for a reason, and that's why I was very confident taking Deiveson Figueiredo in this pick. He was able to sit Marlon Vera on his ass in the 3rd round exchange, putting that right hand straight through the guard. No one has ever done that to Marlon Vera, so it's very much a credit to Deiveson Figueiredo. That's the biggest thing you can take from this fight. And honestly, after Umar Nurmagomedov, I don't see why you don't give Deiveson Figueiredo a title shot for the strap. You know, I just don't see you give him a shot for the title. Like, why not? He's aggressive. He's got KO power. He's got the wrestling and the submission threat there as well, and the championship experience. You know, people do like him. He's someone that brings entertainment to pretty much every single fight. He's very fast paced, and he's got threats absolutely everywhere. So Deiveson, 100%, he will be pushing for that title. Whether he can win it or not is a different story, but I hope he really gets a shot very soon, because he's not getting any younger, even though he fights like he's 26 years old, not 36 years old. But looking at Marlon Vera, he needs to change his approach. Honestly, this slow start approach is just not working for him at all. You know, between any of the fight, I mean, his ground game is just not offensive enough at all, and you know, there's a lot of good wrestlers in that division. I mean, if you got Cory Sandhagen, everyone like that taking him down, Deiveson Figueiredo taking him down, he just gets swallowed by guys like Marab, you know, Henry Cejudo. It's just, yeah, Marlon Vera is in a tricky situation at the moment. And, you know, in this fight, he really needed to utilize the kicks a lot more, because Figgy has a very like back facing stance. Like, he has a straight back and his head's like straight back like that, so his head doesn't have a lot of, you know, room to move linearly. So that's where Marlon Vera, he's got long leg reach too. I think he needed to look at a lot of, you know, classic like Dom Cruz and against Frankie Edgar, he needed to be looking for that kind of shot against Deiveson Figueiredo, and yeah, he stuffed it. He fumbled the bag. So yeah, it's definitely tricky for Marlon Vera. But I'm just keen to see where Figueiredo can go next. I don't know what Vera's going to do, but yeah, Figueiredo I'm very keen for. And, you know, he's just making that age at 36 just not look like a hindrance at all. And moving on to our co-main event, Sharabullet versus Mikhail Olechejczek. Shara, just an amazing striking showcase from this guy. You know, as I said in the predictions, he did a great job of diversifying his striking and investing in the legs and the body early, which, thank you, Shara, got me another perfect prediction. But yeah, he did a great job of just investing early, and then, you know, the dividends paying off. You know, right towards that third round, he just started teeing off. But you got to give credit to Olechejczek not only for his durability, but in the first round, up until he started getting hurt towards like the end of the first round, he was doing a very good job of cutting off Bullet's kickboxing range. He was cutting off his legs, so then he couldn't use those, and he hurt Shara pretty badly in that first round. But moving through that fight, the more Shara put more damage onto his body and his legs, and, you know, going up top with the elbow as well, his elbow was beautiful. He was just taking over completely, especially when it came to the third round. It was mainly with the boxing. He was just doing a fantastic job with that. Boxing, backing Olechejczek up, front leg side kick to the face, just kept him at range at all times. So it was just a fantastic showcase from him. And not only in the striking, his takedown defense was very good as well. But with his call out, I doubt that he's going to get Nick Diaz in his next fight. If anything, as I said, give Nick Diaz to Tony Ferguson, if that can happen, and then, you know, call it a day for, honestly, probably both of them, to be honest. But yeah, aside from all that, for Magomedov, honestly, a fantastic striking showcase from him, and credit to Mikhail Olechejczek for the durability and, you know, making it a dogfight. And moving on to our main event, Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Oh, I wanted Cory to win. I mean, I'm really happy with this fight regardless, because it was a full MMA showcase, but the best part of all was definitely the scrambles in this fight. And to Cory's credit, I mean, how well he managed to not have Umar control him, and he was consistently breaking Umar's hand grip, and then, you know, using the Granby rolls to get out of danger so Umar didn't get in submission-based positions. But the main issue for Cory was the output. I mean, he pretty much struggled to find his range the entire fight, aside from catching Umar with that lead left hook when he was circling out. So, similar to Loopy versus Mackenzie Dern, every time Umar was circling out, Cory would just get that lead left right just on like the side of his head. But that just really dictated that range, because his power punch was not in range. He wasn't getting it there. Umar was doing a very good job of circling out and stepping back linearly as well. Umar's very quick going on the back foot, which I did not realize. He's very fast. But that being said as well, you got to give the full credit to Umar, you know, especially with the confidence. The confidence was a big thing in this fight, and it shows how well he's developed, because you look at the first two rounds, he looked very nervous, he looked very rigid, but the more the fight went on, he got more and more confident, and especially with his hands. I mean, he was landing more and more successful combinations as the fight went on, especially in the fourth and fifth round, where he's never had that experience before. And he's definitely deserving of that title shot after the UFC 306 main event between O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. And for Cory, honestly, he just needed to let those hands go more, and, you know, I think utilize an offensive wrestling threat more as well to keep Umar guessing. But, you know, we'll definitely see Cory back. He's 32 years old, and I have no doubt, you know, he's a gamer. He'll be back by the time he's 34. I think he'll be challenging for a title at some point with whoever has the title at that point. Cory's very confident that Umar is going to beat Sean O'Malley, or if it's Merab, I think it's going to be Sean O'Malley. But yeah, he's very confident that Umar is going to be taking that title from O'Malley or Merab. So it's going to be fascinating to see if these guys will actually ever run it back. And I'm here for it, because their technical display of MMA was fantastic, and it definitely did not disappoint. So yeah, fantastic technical fight to finish off a great card. Now moving on to the Fight Card Awards, kicking it off with the fighter to watch, I'm giving it to Joel Alvarez. You know, he's a very unique fighter with a lot of potential, similar to Azamat Murzakanov, in that if he can stay active, he can be a pretty big problem moving forward in his respective division. And for him, especially fine-tuning that striking with every performance, because no one wants to go to the ground with him except, you know, guys like Islam Makhachev and obviously Arman Tsarukyan when they fought. You know, he's really got an advantage moving into that division. And he's only 31 years old, so he's got a few good years left in him, and he didn't take much damage in this fight, so I'm really hoping we get a very quick turnaround for this guy. Now moving on to the finish of the night, can't not give this guy the finish of the night. I mean, I would put him even as a strong fighter to watch as well. I just wanted to obviously mix it up a bit. Both the guys did fantastically well in the performances on this card, but Kaue's finish was just so vicious. He's extremely vicious with his kickboxing, and he still isn't even 30 years old yet. So what else can we say? I mean, there's not much to analyze in the fight. He absolutely just ransacked Yahya. So definitely keep an eye out for this guy moving over through the next few years, especially with that striking base that he has. And hopefully once he fine-tunes that wrestling, offensive and defensive wrestling, then I think he'll be fantastic. And moving on to the third most notable moment of the card, I'm giving it to Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Just more credit to two guys with extremely high fight IQs, you know, with Umar having his first 5-round fight and building confidence as time went on. And then Cory, you know, he shows that the Dagestani wrestling base is, you know, not as invincible as people think. But, you know, even with Cory losing, Umar winning, either way, vice versa, both of them fantastic performances, fantastic fighters, and I would love to see this fight run back. And moving on to second place, statistically, this has to be, you know, in the top 3, and I'm giving it second place. It's Cheeto getting dropped. You know, it's crazy seeing a guy like Cheeto just getting dropped in general, but going just in the contrast of going from a 5-round beating from O'Malley to a 3-round fight against Figgy, who has been at 125 the entire time and then moves up in weight and shows that he has got more power than a lot of the guys in the division above him. So yeah, it's just so much credit to Figueiredo, and I'm very keen to see where he goes. Wherever he goes next, I'm very keen to see whatever fight he is in. And moving on to the most notable moment of the card, we just have to give it to Tony Ferguson, whether he's retiring, not retiring, or half retiring. I mean, he's done amazing things in his career, you know, like throughout the sport. He went on that 12-fight win streak. He was one of the most successful first unorthodox fighters that would just, you know, mix that brutality in his game as well. Blood everywhere, elbows, Imanari rolls, you know, he really is one of a kind. And I'm very, you know, it's really sad seeing, you know, his career dwindle like this, but saying this fight on the mic, compared to the Paddy Pimblett fight he had, he's just looked a lot more content in terms of, you know, his mindset and what he wants to do in terms of, you know, not storming off. He did well on the mic, all considering what's happened to him. And yeah, as I've said multiple times in this video, either give him Nick Diaz as a final farewell swan song, or if he doesn't get Nick Diaz, I think it's finally time for Tony Ferguson to go. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more MMA-based content, just check out this video on the screen. And if you did like this video, please give it a like, comment, subscribe. It really goes a long way for the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.